Oh man, what a morning. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Talk of the Devils, brought to you by talkofthedevils.co.uk, your number one United podcast. Got two new faces with me today, very good friends of mine, very, very good at what they do. And of course, Wayne. How are you feeling after that, Wayne?
Apathetic and numb, which is par for the course with Manchester United this season, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really painful. I was saying backstage that, we were all saying backstage, we don't deserve to be anywhere near the top four. We don't have any desire, any fight whatsoever. We don't seem to have any plan. Very disappointing. I mean, this is an Everton team, and no disrespect to them, they're probably as a club, the stature of the club, they don't deserve to be there, and yet they are. And they haven't played well. They're not scoring. They're not defending incredibly well, and yet we can't, as a club of Manchester United stature, break teams down and have any idea. Jamie, great to have you on, buddy. Thanks for joining me. And how are you feeling, my man?
Yeah, cheers for having me. Deflated, as always seems to be the case now. The thing is, I seem to get deflated less and less each time it happens because I think I'm slowly disconnecting. It's what can you say? It's everything that you come to expect these days of a United side. Going to play a team that are in the mire, like you say. I don't think anyone deserves anything in football. No one has a divine right, but like you say, the stature of their club, they've never been relegated before. They don't, as a footballing institution, probably don't deserve to be around there. But like you say, they are. But you just know what's going to happen. That we're going to turn up. There's going to be a bouncing atmosphere, and they're going to put in a shift. And it's probably some of their best performances individually this season. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen Alex Iwobi play the way that he did against us today, and it's because we allow teams to do that. So once again, the rest of the weekend's ruined. I'll sit and I'll be deflated. But what do you expect? I think half the players there have checked out mentally already from the season. I think the only one today that I was really anywhere near impressed with was I thought Jadon. Again, he's been one of our only positives this season. I thought he tried. Bruno was inventive with some of his passing at some points, and I thought Rashford had a bright first 20 minutes. But other than that, the performance was a reflection of our season as a whole.
Yeah, very much so. Very, very disappointing. Lots of players that have a relatively good season. As you said, Jadon Sancho, he's just kind of disappeared in the last two games, really. Listen, you can't hold it on one player in particular, but he's been our sort of a little bit of light this season, and even he's not really getting a sniff in at all. Fred, good to have you on, my man. I hope you're well, and just give me your overall thoughts, please, mate.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Marc. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. Sorry I couldn't be under better circumstances. Similar to what Wayne and Jamie have said, it just feels very numb, very dejected. I think the expectation is just diminished as the season has gone on, and we're effectively just limping towards the end of the season. The club just needs a huge reset. The players... I don't like using the word confidence because we're up against an opposition today who arguably having similar confidence levels, if not worse than us pre-match. But their fan base galvanised the performance, and as soon as they got their goal, everyone was on the front foot, and we didn't see that at all from any of our players, unfortunately. There's question marks all over the pitch. I actually disagree with Jamie slightly. I don't think Sancho had a fantastic game today, but I don't think anyone did. I don't think the attackers were running beyond the defence enough. I think we were struggling to retain possession throughout the game. We couldn't string 3 or 4 passes, especially in the second half. I think Rashford looked very bright at the beginning of the game, but apart from the first 2 chances he had in the first 12 minutes, I don't think we had a shot on target until Pogba sort of towards the 70th, 80th minute. So it was very disappointing. I think disappointing is the right word to use, but not surprised because it's been the story of our season, especially in the last few months. But we need to just regroup, take the positives, get to the end of the season, and regroup as a whole, and perhaps give youth the opportunity now towards the back end of the season, because I think top 4 is going to be very difficult to obtain, given Arsenal's games in hand and the games we still have left to play.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. And you use a term disappointing. I think that's been our whole season. Very, very disappointing on the whole, all over, and lots and lots of change. There's been a lot of debate on whether we should play some of the youth players, Medjbury, uh, Alvaro, Fernandez, and a couple of others as well. I had this conversation last night actually, and a lot of people's mentality is that we maybe shouldn't. This is United. We should be going in to win all of our games. Sometimes if you bring that youth in, it kind of maybe takes away some of the attributes you might have from other players. But I just feel that this season is completely capitulated, and maybe they should be given a chance. Wayne, what are your thoughts on that going forward now? Do you think that maybe we should try and save a bit of have a bit of solace, save a bit of pride, and maybe sort of integrate a couple of these players? We've only got 8 games left, give or take.
Yeah, I think it's. I can see the argument for it, but I can also see the argument against it. There are a couple of arguments against it, and I think it's been mentioned in previous shows. I wouldn't have liked, for example, Annabelle to have played in a game like today because, first of all, it's away from home. Goodison was always going to be a little bit up for it. As soon as, if they scored the first goal, which they did, Goodison becomes a bit of a cauldron. I know it wasn't really that today, but still not a great environment for a young player to be making a debut, especially, which is coming on to the major point, especially alongside players like we've got passive players who have got no investment in the short-term prospects of Manchester United because it doesn't matter to them what we do because a lot of them are going to be gone in the summer. So it was a very difficult environment. I would say the home games against Norwich and Brentford are very obvious opportunities to play these kids and give them an opportunity to, like maybe even play 3 or 4 of them and put them in the squad and in the team because they're less, especially now that top four's pretty much gone. Because I think if you'd have put them in today or earlier, I think you're putting almost like a pressure on them to achieve. And these players that we've got, I don't know if I want to say if this is going to come out the right way because I don't want to say that they deserved a chance to put it right. They actually, what I think they deserved is the chance to show themselves for what they are, to fail to meet the minimum standard because it's on the players, right? If we go back a few years, I tweeted it just before we came on air. We 3 years ago we lost 4-0 at Goodison, one of Solskjaer's last games of the first season. He said something like, "Some of these players won't play again for United," and I think he was as ruthless as he could be with that message because he sold a few players that summer, but 6 of them were playing today, and all 3 midfielders played today. And our big problem since that time has been midfield. And I know the consequential argument is Ollie spent money and he brought in players and he had lots of money to do that. The other argument is that he was never, like all the other managers couldn't say the same. It was never backed when it was crucially relevant. We needed midfield reinforcement, and that's when the investment kind of stopped. And you could see the products of that today because really the only thing that changed from today against 3 years ago was Everton's quality. Because if Everton had been up and about us, they would have scored 4 goals because we were so flat, we were so passive. It's becoming a chore. Those players don't want to be on the pitch, and you can see that they don't want to be on the pitch. And as soon as something goes against them, it's like, oh, we've got to go through this again. There was a cross in the last 30 seconds where about 4 or 5 players were in the box. I think Tellez played it from deep, and it looked like 4 or 5 players were attacking for it. That cross should have been going in 20 minutes earlier. Do you know what I mean? That's the kind of situation that we should have been doing, but it was so flat. All areas of the team were disconnected. The one thing that I thought was good when Rangnick came in was the fact that the fact that under Ollie it looked like 3 separate areas of a team were tethered together by one player running backwards and forwards, and that might be Fredo Fernandez. At least under Rangnick, we looked like we were playing a system, however poor and flat that's been. But the players in this situation have let themselves down so badly that there's no hiding place for them. And when they've done that and they've flattered to deceive even, I made a joke on Facebook about it actually. I said, we shouldn't be too critical of these United players because it's some achievement to be consistently underwhelming in the way that they are, And if there was an award, a trophy given for the most underwhelming team, then I'm pretty sure this United team would just about fail to win it. They're that underwhelming. And you wouldn't want to bring kids into that environment. It's not good for those kids. Now, against Norwich and against Brentford, and I know Brentford are a different kettle of fish because they're still a good team, but these are still fairly low-key games for players to get an introduction where the crowd will more or less they would be behind them anyway, but it'd be less of a hostile environment, less of a pressurized environment for them to perform and get a result. And I just don't know what we're going to see. It really depends as well on the dynamic, the players that you're playing alongside those players in the last few games. So let's say Fred is a decent influence to have alongside a midfielder. Would you really want Pogba playing alongside Hannibal for the next couple of games? I don't think I'd want to see that. I don't think it'd be good for them.
No, I agree.
Is it good? I love Ronaldo. I think he's, I'm a Ronaldo fan. I think he's one of the best players of all time. I think even signing him back has been a success to a point. Does it look like it's a good experiment having Elanga alongside Ronaldo? I don't think it is. I don't think Ronaldo mixes well with any of these players that we've got. So it's a very, very difficult question to answer. I'd like to see him, but it all depends on the game. It really, in a funny way, it's better that we lost today, and it's better that we can say that top four's out of the question because it gives a better chance for these players to play. And I think that's what if there's anything we want to see for the last few games, is that, because at least it gives us some kind of entertainment, something different to see. But what's good for us as fans is one thing, what's better for their development is another. And it's a very tricky one.
Very, very tricky indeed. Absolutely spot on. There's a lot of you over on Twitter. We want you to come over to youtube.com/Talk of the Devils. We can't see your comments there. We'd love to go through them and read them out. A number of you watching here as well. Please like and subscribe. It's very, very important to us. And great to see you here. Get your comments in as well. We'd love to go through those too. Jamie, Marcus Rashford today had a couple of opportunities. Looked a little bit brighter, especially at the beginning of the game. Listen, I'm not going to go in on him at all. He's going through a very, very bad period. But it was difficult to watch him, obviously, with those finishes. And normally you'd expect him to put those away, wouldn't you? And on another day, if he'd obviously been on form, we might have been maybe 2-3-1 up. But yeah, your thoughts on Rashford today, really?
Yeah, I think you've summed it up there. I think on a different day, you go back to that season. What was it, 2 seasons ago now? Seems like a lifetime ago. And him and Anthony Martial were both in really good form. Rashford buries those chances straight away, and I would have absolutely loved for one of them to go in just to give him a bit of a boost and give him a bit of a run of form. I think one of the things that I found a bit confusing during the game was he seemed to start quite well on the left, which we know is his preferred position, and then swapped over to the right where he was left a little bit high and dry and wasn't as effective because he can't operate to the style that he wants to play. But at the end of the day, this is probably people will probably disagree with this. This is probably the biggest bad patch of form that Marcus Rashford's been in since he burst onto the scene for us. And most seasons that he's played for us, he's come in clutch. He's weighed in with his share of goals and assists, and he's always looked like a player that wants to attack. Yes, there's been times when his decision making is frustrating, and I think that is something that he does need to work on quite quickly because he's entering that period now where it is starting to become make or break for him. He's not a young kid anymore, despite the fact that he's come through the academy and he broke onto the scene because of an injury to Ashley Fletcher. And if he doesn't start to really work on that decision making, I do worry for him later down the line. I do think he'll come good again. He's one of the ones that that this will be hurting him, and that's what I worry about. I think it's a catch-22. He's in bad form. His head's probably not in the right place at the minute, but every time he performs badly and the club perform badly, it hurts him both as a player and as a fan. So it's a constant cycle. So we need to see him get a confidence boost, whether it's from scoring a goal, a couple of assists, whether it's from a good team performance, which I can't remember the last time we saw that. I know, when we beat Spurs 3-2, but I don't necessarily think that was a good team performance, was it? It was a bit of brilliance from Cristiano Ronaldo, and that was it. But yeah, I think he will come good. But it's easy to pick on certain players, and obviously I'm not saying that's what you're doing here, Mark, but that's what you see all over Twitter. People have these players that they love to go and bash, and they're the whole reason that we're not performing. So Maguire, I feel for him today. I think that he was unlucky for the goal. I think again, there's probably little bits and bobs that he maybe could have done to prevent it, but it's one of those that you just knew that if anyone was going to cause a deflection, that scores the goal for them effectively, because I think De Gea has it covered if it doesn't take a deflection. It was going to be Maguire. He can't seem to catch a break, and I do think he could do with a bit of a run, maybe out of the side, because he constantly gets put in the limelight. And the fact that he's the club captain, the fact that he was £80 million, neither of which technically is his fault. He was appointed club captain, and who's going to turn that down? The £80 million fee has nothing to do with him. It was Leicester's valuation of a player that was instrumental for them, and let's not forget, has been good for us in seasons that he's joined. The problem is that because he isn't necessarily a fashionable player, he's not a flashy centre half or whatever. He's probably a bit of an easy target. He looks a bit clunky sometimes when he does things, but it doesn't mean that he isn't one of our best progressive ball carriers. The passes that he makes. And I know we might touch on this in a little bit, but if and when Ten Hag comes in, I think he's one of the ones that will benefit the most from that system, and being allowed to actually use his good abilities to the full extent. So yeah, I think there's a lot of individual performances today that were shocking. I think the team performance as well as that was also shocking. I think we were intimidated by what seems to be the best Goodison Park atmosphere they've had all season, but I'm not surprised because everyone turns up. We seem to be most clubs' cup final. And when was the last time we had a game against a struggling side that we didn't turn into an absolute monstrosity? Sometimes we scrape through and we get a win, but it's like we could come up against, I don't know, who's the team in the worst run of form in the English football pyramid? Out of all 92 or whatever it is, I reckon we could come up against one of them. But I reckon we could come up against anyone and we'd still find a way to make it difficult for ourselves because people seem to get that extra bounce when they come and play us.
Do you not think? Can I just interrupt there, Jamie? Does that not make you feel better? Because it's a season. The global picture is horrendous. People are horrible. Does it not make you feel better that our team is so benevolent that they'll go around the league just giving points to everyone?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Marcus Rashford's gone from providing meals for hungry kids to providing points for struggling Premier League clubs. We've always been big. The MU Foundation and stuff like that's always been big on charity, and now that's translating into the football side of the business. So we are doing some nice things. But just on that as well, probably in the back of my mind, it makes me feel good that we're still that big of a club that people get them psyched up whenever we come into town. We might not be the threat that we once were. And, I tweeted before that I do think we're slowly becoming the new lads, it's Tottenham. So
yeah,
there's a lot of work to be done. We're going to need another rebuild because today's performance felt like the end of Mourinho's era, the end of Van Gaal's era, the end of Solskjaer's era. The problem is that we didn't have we had a new manager bounce for about 45 minutes against Crystal Palace in his first game. And they've already down tools. So we haven't had that fun period of 18. Do you remember that period under Mourinho where we were unbeaten and everything seemed rosy and he was doing magic tricks using a magician's kit, at the Lowry or whatever. That was when everything seemed to be harmonious. Louis van Gaal doing his enjoy the wine and a mince pie, and when things seem to be rosy under him. We haven't had that under Ranić yet. So there's plenty of work to be done. Fingers crossed the managerial appointment goes well and we can start with a big clear out in the summer.
Yeah, very good points, well made. Thanks, matey. And I'm going to come to you all actually in a moment about Ten Hag. Obviously, that's pretty much a lot of information over the last few days. It's pretty much all but done. And I just want to get your opinions on that in a moment. I just want to come to you quickly, Fred, about the squad today. Dave makes a really good point here, and I almost said exactly the same words. 2 keepers on the bench, Henderson and Heaton. And that says it all about the squad today. And I feel that Ralph has been unfairly... he's not had it easy this season. He's come in halfway through, difficult time. Half the players don't want to play. He's had a number of injuries. And of course, that is shown today. When you have 2 keepers on the bench, that says it all. But what did you make of the squad today? And particularly in the midfield as well. I really wanted to see Fred and Matic today, but it didn't work out for us. And I was disappointed with that.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I saw the bench in particular. I think it's been like that the past few months, the two keepers, and it just shows our lack of depth. The main takeaway I had was that I lack a depth in attacking options more than the keepers. I mean, we look at the bench, or midway through the second half, we ended up our midfield was Mata and Pogba at one point, and that they're not going to be here potentially next season. So this is what we have to deal with. We're relying on that circumstance. I think I do feel for Ralph. He's been dealt a tricky hand, but the main issue is the players, the mentality of the players. They're just walking around the pitch. The fact I mentioned earlier that we're arguably playing the one club that's in a huge crisis, more of a crisis than us, and as soon as they got their goal, they just turned it on. It was us that were walking, and these players didn't react to that. And that's the concerning thing. I totally agree with what Jamie said in terms of most teams who play us, it's effectively that cup final. But that the fact that we're not turning up to match that, that's the concerning thing, or that's the key takeaway I have, or the main concern I have. At first, I thought it was a fitness problem, especially with Ralph's philosophy, his pressing game. I thought, okay, I've given him the players the benefit of the doubt that he's coming midway through a season, and there's obviously an adapting time lag associated with it. But I think it's just a huge motivational problem where they're just walking over the pitch. I mean, I think the goal itself came from a poor pass into Matches. He was on his toes, and Everton just closed him down and transitioned quickly. And unfortunately, it was a big deflection on Maguire, who can't catch a break. But look, we did not look like scoring today. The players didn't look like they wanted it. We were losing out on the first and second phases of all plays. The players have to hold their heads in shame. And Ten Hag, or whoever the new manager is incoming at the end of the season, they've got a real big job on their hand, and they're going to earn their money because something has to be done. There's obviously a culture problem at the club, and it's obviously infectious. Whether it's to do with a small core group of players, and that's causing the whole changing room to sort of endure this lack of motivational thought process. I don't know, but something has to change. And it doesn't help that we've got a huge contingency of players who, at the end of their contracts, they've effectively got not much to play for, and they are still in our first 11. These aren't squad players, so we're relying on players who are effectively it hasn't even got a shop window effect. They're just seeing the season out and planning for their next move. And a club in our position shouldn't be like that. And I do feel for Ralph, because he hasn't got a say in this. This is a problem that's compounded over the past few months and years. But we just need to get to the end of the season now and regroup. It's a real tricky one. It's a real difficult one to take. But the fact that Everton have shown more passion today is very concerning, and that needs to be addressed ASAP if we want to galvanise anything from this season before the start of next year.
David De Gea's made a few comments actually, which I'm going to read out in a moment. I'm going to come to each of you of what you make of those. Just wanted to quickly say Wayne will be doing a match report tomorrow, which will be available on talkofthedevils.co.uk. So please go over and have a look at that. It'd be great, and we'll do our players ratings in a moment at the end of the show. But anyway, as I said, please get liking and subscribing. Great to see lots of you over on Twitter. Come over to YouTube and come over here and talk to us. So David De Gea here made some comments. He said Everton played Wednesday and were very tired, but they had far more desire than us. I mean, they only played 4 days ago, 3.5 days ago. We haven't played for a whole week. We had a whole week to train, and we still didn't have as much desire or energy as them, and that says a lot to me at least. But they have more desire than us. That is not acceptable. Very sad to lose today. We don't score, but we don't create proper chances to score. We are not good enough. That is for sure. It will be difficult to finish in the top four. Wayne, what do you make of those comments?
Yeah, interesting. And also, I saw someone, I was just flicking at my Twitter, and someone said that Maguire hadn't come out and spoken again. I know he's been criticised for that. De Gea, look, he's been there longer than anyone. I know Ronaldo had a spell before him. He's been there consistently long enough to, and played consistently well enough to be able to call out the standard. And he's right. I mean, Fred just commented there. He was talking about basically a systemic issue at United. I just thought, while I was thinking about it, while Fred was talking about it, I was trying to run it through my head and wondering if there was a concise way I could offer my theory on everything that's happened at United very quickly. Although we are talking about Everton and a microcosm, which is, as Fred quite rightly said, I think everything manifested itself in the fact that you've got a few out of contract players plodding around a pitch with nothing to do, and no urgency. I think the problem started, and Jamie also mentioned a great point earlier about, Matthew. Good afternoon, by the way, Matthew. Hope you're well. Jamie made a great point about the United are still the biggest team for an opponent. They're still a cup final team for the opponent. Now, our players don't understand, and I wonder if it's because there's just a disconnect of all the things I'm going to mention in a moment. The players don't understand that that's a privilege, and I don't even think they understand the pressure of that. It's a privilege of playing for United. It's a historical privilege. Everyone that you speak to who's played for United, who has achieved something for the club, understands the privilege. They know that teams try harder against United. It's not a myth that's made up because we're all United fans and we're shocked at seeing it from teams becoming Brazil 1970 every week. It's a fact. It happens. It's actually there. Opponents will talk about it, and then players will come to United from other clubs will say, "Oh my God, that player wasn't trying as hard for me when I was playing for Middlesbrough or something." Do you know what I mean? It's an accepted fact in football. I wonder if the disconnects started really with, it started unraveling when Moyes came in. Understandable decision to let some of the staff go, but as soon as he let a lot of the staff go, you're obviously losing that first bond because those staff are synonymous in the way that United, the autonomy of what Fergie was doing. In fact, they were running a lot of stuff themselves. They knew the standard of the club. They knew how to get the players motivated. One of the biggest problems that we've had, and nobody ever really talks about this, is in the period just before Van Gaal got the job, we lost about 3,000 games of experience, and that was like Vidic and Ferdinand and Giggs retiring and Evra. All that first team experience went, and they were replaced by Di Maria and Falcao and players like that who didn't have Premier League experience and they didn't have experience playing for United, so they wouldn't know what it was like for a team to come up against United. When I'm trying to rifle through these reasons as quick as I can. When Mourinho came in, he basically said at the back end of his first season, we're going to sacrifice the league and put all the eggs in the Europa League basket, which meant you're going to prioritise one set of results over another. Very difficult to do that at United without having a massive counter effect on, you can't afford to lose a single game. That should have always been the message. And Mourinho used to be really good at that at Chelsea. You can remember he used to be notorious with the League Cup, didn't he? He wouldn't allow any. It was like we haven't lost a game for years, even when they had lost. They lost a game on penalties against Charlton, Chelsea, and he wouldn't accept that as a defeat. So he was so over the top about this undefeated record. But against when he was United manager, it was like, oh well, we can lose some games. It doesn't matter if we don't finish in the top four. Very damaging because the long term thing was when he tried to motivate those players going forward, they weren't up for it. So Ollie came in and obviously inherited this sort of jumble of a mess. And I think Ollie, as much as he represented the standards of the club, and he wasn't able as a coach to teach them and get the players for whatever reason, a myriad of reasons, all the ones I've just talked about. Very difficult once that fragmented process has begun and once you broke it down to rebuild it back. Now, it's funny because the roundabout way, not everything should be so complicated to be fixed. And Fred mentioned there the players that were rambling around at the end of the game who were going to be out of contract and they've got nothing to do. That could be one of the blessings in disguise for us because if they're all going out of the door, let's say 4, 5, 6 players are going out of the door, you don't have to replace them all with megastars. You just have to replace them with players who've got commitment and desire. And even if they're not good enough, you will see a dramatic impact in, first of all, the team performance as a solid base, and second of all, in the connection from the crowd, and that will have a massive impact on the performance. What United need, what they've historically been good on, is having 6 or 7 workers and 3 or 4 stars. That's what they're good on. At the moment, they've got 11 players, or maybe 9 or 10 players who think that they're the star, and you can't sustain. United can't live like that. You've now got almost every player is indulging on the profile of playing for United and not knowing what it means to actually work for that thing. And everything that Jamie and Fred was talking about there about, first of all, the ambling around on the, they just don't know what they're doing because they've got no desire and no objective to achieve. And what Jamie was saying about the cup finals and the players not being, up for it and not really having the, I don't want to say intelligence, awareness of it. They don't have the awareness of it. These massive problems that exist might be solved because these players are going to be out of the door soon. So you can introduce a new generation. If it's younger players, great. If it's players from outside of the club, just as well, as long as they've got the right attitude to work for United, and we don't just bring in, like all the big names just for the sake of replacing another big name. So De Gea's right, but De Gea's he's been through that Ferguson system where you only need 5 or 6. When the team that he won the league in, right, had 3 or 4 stars. De Gea, like Van Persie was a star, Rooney was a star, everyone else was working. Pretty much, I can't think of anyone who you would say was like a Ronaldo or Maguire, like stands up as I'm not calling these players out, or even a Rashford. These players who are standing out as big marketing idols and will run off to a social media profile and say, we go again next week, and everyone will lap it up and say that, oh, well, they're not to blame because they said blah, 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 blah. It doesn't work like that because we've seen it on the pitch. And I just think De Gea's right. He's coming out and he's saying it. People will be sick of hearing it. I'm sick of hearing it. I'm glad I'm on here talking to you guys and not listening to that. But from the counter product to what everyone's just said and all the historical events, what I've just ran through, I think that actually, in a roundabout way, and maybe I'm just being optimistic because it can't be any worse, that this summer might actually be a very good, convenient turning point for that.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, there's a we have to go on track record actually over the last few years, and there's always a part of me that's not very optimistic about maybe acquiring the right players or maybe going for the right players and whatever that might be. But I feel that if we are potentially getting one of the right men in, I think, with Erik ten Hag, with Rav potentially going up into a senior consultancy role. And also I read, and I come to you on this, Jamie, in the last few days, Erik ten Hag has asked for assurances, and I guess this is a conversation you might have with every employer, whoever that may be, but he's asked for assurances that he's going to be able to have a say in all of the departures, and that's important to him. All of the players that they want to get in, and that's important to him. And obviously how much money he's going to have in order to achieve that. But what do you make of that? And Ten Hag, just on your overall thoughts on him too.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's well within his rights to seek those assurances. I think if he's kept tabs on what we've done since Fergie left in 2013. If I'm the next wave of manager coming through to the top table of European talent, and I'm looking at the setup that I've got at the minute, where they're a very, very, very well run club. Am I looking at how Moyes was treated? We've seen all the stuff about the shortlist that Moyes gave, to the people upstairs and said, go get me the likes of Kroos, go get me the likes of Fabregas, and he was given Marouane Fellaini on deadline day and Juan Mata in January. Mourinho arguably probably got a lot of the stuff that he did want, but you have to think how much of that was based on commercial value. Van Gaal, the same. We signed Falcao on huge, with a huge loan fee, huge wages, because Falcao was a good marketable name probably to our South American clientele. Di Maria was the one that I probably thought was a very, very good signing. He'd just come off the back of a man of the match performance in a Champions League final. And I thought, this could be something that really helps spur us on. And we all know how that went. So for me, for Ten Hag, what he needs to be looking for, we as a club need to be doing, is just give him a budget. Just turn around and go, here's your budget. and it's up to you how that budget gets broken up. Let him bring in a scouting network. Let him work with Ranić when Ranić's appointed to whatever job he does. Whoever then sits sort of above that as, you know, whether it's a director of football, head of football operations, whatever they're going to call it, let them work together and bring in a scouting network, bring in their connections across Europe. That you know, Ranić's is very well connected across Europe. And just let them identify the profile of players and not care about their marketability, their resale value, or anything like that. We're a massive, massive, globally I'm getting words mixed up here. Globally corporate successful club, whatever you want to say. You know, we bring in a huge amount of money. So if they turn around and go, "Here's 150 million pound. This is your budget. If you spend it wrong, that's on you. If you buy a caliber of player that doesn't work out and you sell him for a loss the following year, all right, that gets detracted from your budget. The same as most senior positions get given a big top jobs. You know, do you think that the CEO of most companies will sit there with the head of the sales division or whatever and say, well, you know, I'm going to sit and micromanage you, and actually who you hire, who you bring in, I want second. No, people are judged on their results. People are judged on their performance, and I feel like that's what we need to do. Allow Ten Hag to work in whatever way that he wants to work in. He's done well now. I know he wasn't in charge during the Europa League final against us. I can't remember the name of the guy that was. Bosk or something anyway. But Ten Hag, I'm pretty sure, had to then pick up the rebuild. He had to deal with the exodus of players over the next 12 to 18 months that left. You know, they lost Frankie de Jong, they lost Matthias de Ligt. You know, when they lost Ziyech, they lost Van der Beek. You know, but they do these things without skipping a beat. Andre Onana was banned for substance abuse. Wasn't allowed to play for them for a year. You know, and he brought him up. They had Stecklenburg playing because he managed to find a niche in his system that he thought, oh, we'll bring in this player that works well in my system. And that's what we've been lacking for so long. You know, people can laugh about City going out and spending $250 million every transfer window on defenders or whatever. But it's because Pep and his team identify fullbacks, centre-halves or whatever that benefit their system, can fill a gap, and they'll move forward straight away.
9 times out of 10 as well, they're not these commercial players. They're players that everyone is aware of, but they're not like, you know, the best left back, right back, whoever that may be. They're players that we've heard of, but still fit the system. And Liverpool do a great job of that as well. Exactly.
And it's something that we've been quite bad at now for some time, is identifying players. And I mentioned this on a different stream a few weeks ago. Why do we seem to not be able to identify players who, like, as they're emerging, rather than it being at the point where everyone in your, you know, you look at Tchouaméni now, realistically, he'll go to Real Madrid, he'll go to, you know, Barcelona, PSG, whatever, and they'll splash the cash in him. But Tchouaméni was still a good footballer 12 months ago. So I don't understand, with this scouting network we have, you know, you saw the things about the right backs and stuff that we scouted. It was like, you know, we scouted 346,000 right backs or something ridiculous. I know obviously that wasn't the statistic, but you know what I mean.
Close enough.
Yeah, something like that. And we ended up buying somebody that was on screen in the Premier League week in, week out, and we got rinsed for him because Crystal Palace went, oh, you can afford him, so you're going to have to pay over the odds of it. So, yeah, I feel like I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but my thing is that Ten Hag can demand realistically what he wants, because at the end of the day, if he wants all this set up and he comes in and he has the absolute best environment for him to perform in, and then the performances don't match our expectations, then there isn't anywhere left to put the book. It's, well, these are the players that you brought in. No one's been signed because they're marketable. No one's been signed because, oh, we're mates with their agent. They're players that you want. And I'm pretty sure that's how most top football clubs will run. I mean, I know Liverpool have a few issues of their own when it comes to stuff like that, and we won't go into that on this one. But they're still in a good setup where their system works. Just on that, really quickly, when we talk about systems, you know, you look at like Ten Hag system, for example. I was watching Wolves Newcastle yesterday, and one thing with Wolves that always strikes me is it's so easy to identify the system in which they're operating when they're defending, when they're transitioning, and when they're in the attack phase. You can see on the pitch every single player knows their role, and you can almost see the formation lined out as it is on the sheet. And if somebody steps forward and steps out of that, you know, so when they're in the attacking third, for example, Ruben Neves might drift off a little bit because he likes to operate on the edge of the box. Someone will fill where Ruben Neves goes, and they still maintain the general shape. You look at us today, and there was no semblance whatsoever of a formation, of a tactical drill. And it's week in, week out. It baffles me. There was a point where Bruno was playing as, you know, he was quite deep on the left-hand side. and there's no one ahead of him to play the ball in because somebody's drifting around in the 10 or whatever. And it just baffles me that, Wolves had a managerial changeover in the summer, and they've still played the exact same system that they were playing under Espirito Santo. And look at where they are now. They're still doing well. So, yeah, I feel like I answered quite a few points there, Mark. I do apologise.
Honestly, it's a great conversation. We've seemed to have moved away from reaction a little bit and talking about the future. No, absolutely fine. It's good conversation. And obviously, I've not spoken to you guys about this. So we're kind of looking forward now into what we're expecting over the next few months. And you got to think, Fred, that after 9 years of not having a Premier League title, obviously patience is very thin anyway, but there's a constant pattern here, and there's only so many times that you think that they can continue with that pattern until something's got to give. So surely, and I've said this to you before actually, and I think I said this to you the other week, Wayne, at some point I do feel sometimes United are a good business model, but they could be that much better, make more money if they were also challenging on all fronts. And I don't understand why these movements haven't necessarily been done yet. And hopefully we'll see that going forward. But just give me very quickly your overall on Ten Hag and what you expect.
Very excited. I think the problem, as Jamie alluded to, is we don't have a distinct system or style of play. I mean, especially when Ragnick took over the reins at the back end of last year, the words gegenpressing, high pressing, rock and roll football were all thrown out. We haven't seen that. And my personal opinion on that is the squad is currently a construct of, you've got a few Sir Alex Ferguson players still there. You've got David Moyes signing in Mata. You've got some still Louis van Gaal players. You've got Mourinho, Solskjaer players, and they're all totally different managers. We haven't given the manager the opportunity or the time to actually, fulfill a project and their vision in terms of recruitment. We're just too passive on that front. And that's the problem. I actually think, if memory serves me right, I actually think Maguire was actually spoken about under Mourinho, and then he was signed a year later, and then by that time we brought Ollie in, and that just shows the problem with the club. We're not signing players for a certain system or within a specific time frame, and that's something we really need to address. And if the reports that are coming out are to be true, that Ten Hag wants full involvement in that process, then that's fantastic. In my opinion, that should be a bare minimum at every club. The manager should have a say in on-field issues from top to bottom, and I really, really hope that Ragnick has a significant role in that too. I think it could be a huge blessing in disguise for Ten Hag or the new manager. He's seen these players now for 4, 5, 6 months. He's going to know more than anyone their strengths, their weaknesses, their personalities, all the off and on the field issues. So hopefully there's that collaboration from top to bottom, and there's radical change, because there has to be. And I think Ten Hag's even credited the works of Overmars and Van der Sar at Ajax and how instrumental they are in his success. So we need to modernise that. I think that's the way modern football is going. The times under Sir Alex Ferguson, where he had total control, it was largely him and David Gill running the club. It's not so much like that anymore. There are technical directors, there are sporting directors, there are middle management effectively, who have a greater say in the decision making of how the clubs run. So yeah, look, we need to address that, because I think that's been an issue, and that then feeds onto recruitment. And going back to what Ray mentioned earlier, the sort of collective contracts that are coming to the end this season, it could be a blessing in disguise, because we've not been the best club at selling players for a number of reasons. So hopefully this could be effectively like a new start and a fresh canvas for Ten Hag to come into, and that will give him the opportunity to sort of buy the players he wants, implement his philosophy. But the club and the personnel above him need to get that right. They need to back him. They need to sign first, second targets. If he wants a centre back, a centre mid, a striker, whatever, in the summer window coming, they have to get it. They can't wait 6 months or 12 months, because by the time you address those issues, 3 more issues are going to arise at that point. So yeah, there has to be a collaborative effort, on the field and off the field above. And hopefully, Richard Arnold will facilitate that as well. He's been very positive that he's sort of wanting the football decision-making element of the game to the specialists. And time will tell. Time will tell. I think, it's definitely time for optimism despite today's result.
I absolutely agree with you. I know that we've done this for a number of years now, but you have to take positives and things. It's not an overnight process. You have to believe in this in people. Richard Arnold's come in, has obviously been very much aware of the stick and everything that happened with Ed Woodward. Probably doesn't want to have that same thing happen again, so he's going to try and make those different movements, and hopefully he will be able to get those right footballing brains in. So something to look forward to in the summer, and I hope that it obviously does change. Just some more comments coming out about the game from Ralph Ragnick. I'm going to come to you guys about that shortly, and then we're going to do player ratings and then wrap up. But I just want to say to everyone, thanks for the comments today. Please get in, like and subscribe, and it is important to us. Wayne, Fred Ragnick said Fred had some muscular problems today on his hip flexor. We were already without Scott McTominay, without both defensive midfielders. It isn't good for us. Obviously, we've spoken about this today. Midfield is definitely one of the areas that we need to look at, but this is exactly the prime example where Fred's not quite fit, Scott is out, and then we don't really have too many players to look to, do we? But what do you make about those comments?
Well, yeah, he played him. He had to play him. I can see the sense in not starting Pogba, because Pogba played for a red card mode, then he played for a draw when he came on. I could see the sense in why he picked him, and at least Fred put himself through it. I still don't understand why Luke Shaw has had an operation that, with 3 weeks to go, 4 weeks to go until, not 4, it's 6, isn't it? 6 weeks, but he could have at least postponed that operation, surely. But at least Fred put himself through it. Fred, probably one of a handful of players who was invested in what happens beyond this season. So I can see why that happened and why the manager played him. There are many things that got wrong that were wrong today, but I don't think picking Fred was one of them.
No,
even if he did have to
agree.
come off.
Yeah, he had to use what he had at his disposal, but it kind of may have explained. I was expecting more of an energetic Fred today. Didn't really see it, and that could obviously explain why, and that's obviously an unfortunate thing. He's been superb, particularly under Ralph Ragnick in the last few months, and obviously we didn't see that same tenacity today, so that could explain why. Jamie, he's also mentioned about making the top 4. I know we've spoken about this already today, but he said going to be very difficult as long as we don't win our own games. It doesn't make sense to hope for good results from other teams. That's absolutely right. It's all about how you play, what you can put on the league table, as opposed to being hopeful of other games and their results. But what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's spot on. Last summer everyone protested the idea of the European Super League because Champions League qualification should be something you earn, not something that you have a birthright to. And it's the same with this season. If we can't qualify by winning our own games and putting ourselves in a position to qualify, then we don't deserve to be there. It's as simple as that. I want Champions League football every year as a United fan, of course I do. But at the same time, I don't want to sit here week in, week out, hoping that Arsenal drop points and we capitalise, or Spurs drop points and we capitalise, and there's somebody that slips up above us and we have an opportunity to get in there. Because every time that we seem to be in a position where we can gain some ground, we decide to go, nah, you know what, I don't quite fancy it. The comment that came up just then about Thursday night football, and everything we'll get for Thursday night football at this rate, I think we'll be out of the European. Yeah, there you go. I don't really see us picking up enough points to get into the Conference League. But he's right. You have to win your own games. It's as simple as that. You sit down and start the season, surely, and you go, if we win all our own games, we'll win the league. Simple as that. Everyone sits there and thinks the same. Obviously, I know it's not as simple as that, but you have to at least show the fight and desire to want to win your own games. I would much rather see us lose today 1-0 if every single player on that pitch put a shift in, and it was one of those days where it just wasn't for us. I saw a stat before that Everton ran 10 kilometres more than us. Now, that for me is the absolute bare minimum you can be doing. It's you're an athlete, you're a footballer. So why aren't you running? Now, the excuse could be potentially, the counter attacked was a little bit more and things like that. And they banked a little bit deeper, so they had a bit more ground to cover in behind. But I think it's all nonsense. We lost the ball so many times, and at least in the first 60 minutes, we were chasing the game a lot. But you notice the amount of times that sort of Ronaldo would give the ball away in the final third and would throw his arms up in the air in a strop and would then just stand still. If you're in a position where a team is outrunning you and has more desire, realistically, mentally, you're already on the back foot, and you either need a superb performance from your team and your tactics to be spot on. I'm not saying that every game you have to be the team that covers the most ground, because you might have a system that doesn't require that. But if that is the bare minimum, and if Everton are covering more ground than us today, if teams are covering more ground than us across the course of the season, chances are we're not showing desire, we're not showing fight, and we don't deserve to be in the top four. And again, I said it just before we came on the stream. If this team came up against Real Madrid with Karim Benzema in the form that he's in, if we came up against City or Liverpool in the Champions League, in the latter stages of it, if we came up against even Barcelona, I know Barcelona have had a bit of a bad season, but when they turn it on, they turn it on, and I don't want to play. I don't want to play them. We need a massive.
Embarrassed. We'd be embarrassed.
And as embarrassing as it is losing 1-0 at Goodison, when they're 17th in the Premier League. They've kept 5 clean sheets all season before we turn up. It's one of those that, yes, you want the best for your football club all the time, but to be realistic, do we deserve to be there? The answer is no. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely spot on. Great points, well made. Thanks, matey. And just to come back to Marcus Rashford very quickly, Fred, and then we're going to go around and do a quick player rating. In the first half, playing on the left-hand side, 100% shot accuracy, 2 out of 2, 100% area duels, 1 out of 1, 82% final third pass accuracy, 32 total touches, 2 ball recoveries, and 1 interception made. That's far better than what we've seen from him recently, but it also begs the question, as we alluded to earlier, you got to keep him on that left-hand side, but do we want to maybe improve that side of his game so that they can have everybody interchanging? Because you look at Sir Alex days, he had 2 wingers, not in the same formation, but they would interchange all the time and be just as successful on both sides. Do you think that that's something that's lacking from us in particular, not Rashford necessarily, and do you think that maybe that's something we should work on for Rashford, playing him on the right more?
I don't think he's a right winger. I think we saw the best of him in the first half today because he started on the left. The problem is we've got Sancho and Rashford are both left wingers. I think everyone thought Sancho was going to be our right wing saviour. Evidently, that's not the case. Rashford's a funny one. The problem is it depends on the style of play. If we want to play with right-footed left wingers and vice versa on the other side, then that suits Rashford's game perfectly. They both like cutting in. They both like attacking the far post, taking on a few players. It depends on what the manager's trying to implement. I do like the interchanging dynamic play. The thing I would comment on that is that it was very rigid in that 20 minutes hit, then they swapped. They don't so much sense how the game's going, and I'm Rashford's having a go at Seamus Coleman, he's taking him on, I'll stay on there, or Sancho struggling against Mikalenko on the left, let's swap it over. It's more 20 minutes, Ralph's telling them what to do, we'll swap. In another 15 minutes we'll swap back. Whether they're shouting that on the timeline, I don't know, but the main issue I have with our wide players is that they don't track back. And we saw today Arunwan Basako second half was just completely dominated. All their attacks in the immediate time after the second half came on our right side, and whoever was on our right wing position, they didn't track back, and that's a huge problem. And Alex Ferguson,
I was going to ask
wingers,
about.
he liked the wide players.
I was going to ask about. Sorry to interrupt, buddy. I was going to ask about Arunwan Basako. Obviously, his first proper full debut back for a little while now. What did you make of his performance there? I think there was a couple of crunching tackles he went in for, a couple of good moments. He had obviously the opportunity at the end. It was a great block. But what did you make of his performance today?
good spells. He had a few good clearances, but relatively unconvincing, unfortunately. The problem now is that it's all relative, isn't it? I mean, if we look at the other right backs he's competing with in the country and the league, he's unfortunately, I don't think that quality is there. He's positionally inept at times. His crossing is an issue. And there were times today where he was giving the ball away, but it wasn't just Wan-Bissaka. But equally, it's a systematic issue with the wingers not protecting him. So it's sort of chicken and egg, really. Is it just his fault, or is it other players around him not backing him up? Is he a title winning right back? I'm not convinced, unfortunately. However, he's definitely an option as a squad player. But I think that goes to all our fullbacks. Unfortunately, I think we could upgrade all four of them. They all have their deficiencies in certain ways, but the wingers definitely need to do better. And the same with the centre mids. I mean, if you look at Liverpool, you know, the problem at the league has at the moment is that we've got two teams who have just raised the bar in recent years, and although usually you have those industrious players that can sort of counteract and fill in the holes of your individual quality players may have. You can't survive like that anymore. Your quality players are expected to put in a shift every single game as well, and we've got that issue. Unfortunately, our quality players aren't putting in a shift, and we lack that balance of the industrious players in key positions. And that's why I was quite controversial. I got a lot of stick in the summer when we sold Dan James. A lot of people advocated that, but I think he would be the perfect player.
He was our best player tracking back. He was our best
absolutely,
player.
Absolutely, yeah. And we've got no one like that now. And it's only when they're gone that you realise what you're missing. And I'm not saying he was going to win us the league, but players like Park, players like O'Shea, you need those players to have any success. Look at Liverpool have them in their midfield. City are a little bit of an anomaly because their quality players also have that element, but they do keep possession. That's their thing. But look, we need to sign the right players. We need to get that balance between quality and industry, and hopefully Ten Hag will identify that and advocate that in the years to come.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Just to give you a little bit of an update, Arsenal are 1-0 down at the moment against Brighton, which is excellent. And but Chelsea are 4-0 up against Southampton after 33 minutes, absolutely smashing them. So
another 9-0 incoming.
Wow, possibly. I mean, yeah, three within 2 years. I mean, something's not going right, is it? But there you go. Just going to come on to player ratings now. Going to try and keep this relatively quick if we can, guys. Okay, so firstly, David De Gea. Wayne, you first.
6, made a really good save. Couldn't blame him for the goal. Other than that, I had no problem with his kicking or anything today. Well, I didn't think so. I think he was probably put in a couple of airy moments as well. So yeah, 6 standard.
Yeah, short and sweet, perfect. Jamie, yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to give him a 6 as well. I think it's the first time I've ever seen him under pressure deliver a bit of a long ball out that found its target.
I would absolutely agree with you. That's probably what Wayne was alluding to as well. Fred, David De Gea.
Yeah, full house, 6 as well. Really steady game. Good save on the deflection in the first half, but yeah, so I'll go with the 6.
Yeah, me too. I absolutely agree with you all. That's an easy one. So Victor Lindelof today. Wayne, you first.
6. I don't think he did anything wrong. But not very good. The problem with Lindelof in games like this is that sometimes he gets bullied a little bit. And I'm not saying I saw it that often today, but sometimes you need top class. That's the difference between what everyone's been talking about today, where United are and where they want to be, is unfortunately improvements across the board, and a 6 out of 10 performance when you really want a 7 or 8 from centre back. Not that he did anything wrong, but sometimes it's not always the obvious things that need improving.
Yeah, it's hard to give player ratings when the whole team has been really poor. But on that note, Maguire for you, Wayne, what would you give him?
6 again. I'm not. Everyone's said the same. Not necessarily blaming him for the goal. A couple of people sort of I've seen saying, he could have positioned himself better. I'm not blaming him for that. There are a lot. He did a couple of errant passes, which are tempting me to give him a 5, but I'm still going to go 6. I don't think he was horrendous. I think there were a couple of things he did all right as well. So, but again, I'm not going to pin the goal on him. I just think he was unfortunate with that. So 6 for me.
Yeah, fair enough. Jamie, Lindelof and Maguire for you, mate.
I'm going to give them both 5s because I think that's a middle of the road score, which is where they were at. I saw a tweet today that made me laugh because it was so true, and it said that Lindelof's best ability is being the only United player that no one has an opinion on. So for that reason, I think he escaped a lot of criticism. But I just give them both 5s. I don't think either of them really did anything wrong, but I don't think they did much right either.
Yeah, Fred.
I'd give them a 6. Again, steady road. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do anything spectacular. A few wayward passes from Maguire in the first half. I think Lindelof was quite good aerially, but I think we was fortunate that Calvert-Lewin's not in good form. Otherwise, he could have done a job on Lindelof. I'd have liked to have seen more of those over the top passes from Lindelof. But to be honest, there probably wouldn't have been anyone in the attack to be able to receive again.
No.
So. Yeah, I think 5 or 6 is the right ballpark.
Yeah, I would agree with Jamie. More so, I think middle of the road 5s for me. They didn't do anything particularly wrong, but as you say, it's very difficult to score a team when they've all been poor, and I don't think they probably deserve any of them really deserve more than a 5 today, if I'm honest. Wayne, Tellez and Arunwan Basako for you, please.
I think it's a tough one. This. I think Wan-Bissaka was better defensively. Tellez came alive a little bit later on, but I think overall he was very, very poor. His positioning sometimes was pretty bad. And his passing in the first half, his positioning in the first half, he was all over the place. Sometimes he seemed to be playing inside forward. Sometimes I think there was one point where he left Matic to play left back. And that's a disaster waiting to happen. I want to score Wan-Bissaka higher than Tellez, but I think both deserve a 5. I'm inclined to probably say Wan-Bissaka 6 if I'm giving the other centre back 6. So maybe that's what I'll go. Wan-Bissaka 6, Tellez 5.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I'm going to change it up a little bit. Jamie, Fred, and Matic.
Fred's an hard one because he didn't last the game, but he put a shift in even when you could tell he was carrying a knock. I think the fact that he's become one of our most important players under Ranić speaks volumes for his transformation. I'll give him a 6 because again I don't really think he did much wrong. Matic, being honest, I don't really remember much of what he did throughout the game.
I agree, and I think that speaks volumes actually.
Yeah. He lasted longer than I thought he would. Is that a positive? So I'll give him a 5, I suppose.
There's nothing wrong with that, Jamie. If someone lasts longer than what you thought they would.
Exactly.
Great stuff. That really tickled me. Thank you. Sancho for you, Fred.
It might be a bit harsh. I'm going to go for a 4. I don't remember anything Sancho did today. I think he was largely anonymous throughout the game. I was very surprised that Rashford came off instead of Sancho. Actually, I think Rashford had far greater chances. He was in the game more, which is not how it's been in recent weeks and months. But yeah, unfortunately, I have to go for a 4 with Sancho.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Wayne, what would you score Rashford?
Normally, I would score him a 5. I think, but I think Rashford on his recent form, I'd give him a 6 because he started quite well, and I completely agree with Fred. I don't know why he was brought off on today's performance. Just moving back over onto the left. Fred called it earlier about the rigid switching, which happens all the time. It happens like 20 or 30 minutes into a game, regardless of our players playing. I think he might have even been against Palace in the first game. They're one of Rangnick's first games. Sancho was absolutely killing one of the fullbacks, and he just switched him over for no reason, and it just stopped all the momentum of the game. Even though I think it was Wolves actually, and yeah, we did it again, which is not helping Rashford. Do you know? I think Sancho's better on the left. Rashford started better on the left, so just keep him there, let him play well. He shouldn't have been brought off. I'll give him, like I said, a 6 today. If it was a normal game and Rashford had just been playing his normal run of performance, I still think it's a 5. But it was definitely an improvement from what we've seen, and I would have kept him on.
Yeah, good points, well made. Jamie, Bruno Fernandes.
I'm going to say 4 because, and I feel like that's a bit harsh, but at the same time, I liked his attempts a lot of the game. But you see this phrase "hero ball" getting thrown around a lot these days on Twitter. I think half of it was hero ball. Half of it was a bit too smart for what we wanted to do, how we were playing, I should say. There was, I think there was a point in sorry, my Alexa thought I was talking to her. There was a point, I want to say it was around the 60th minute. He tried an outside foot pass into the box, and it was a lovely weighted pass
to Rashford.
But I think it was to Rashford.
Yeah,
but then we didn't attack the ball properly. There was no one really waiting around for any knockdowns, any second balls. So I think through a mixture of wayward passing and miss-hit attempts, and then also maybe being a bit too smart for us on the day when we just needed to play basic, simple passes to feet. Yeah, probably a 4. He's the man you rely on a lot of the time. So I think I was a bit disappointed with him today.
Yeah, don't disagree with you. Finally, Fred, Cristiano Ronaldo.
It's a tricky one. It interlinks with the midfielders. I think Ronaldo's coming far too deep. There were times where we were getting in positions. There weren't many times where we were getting in positions to cross, but when we did, there was no one in the box. Ronaldo's at one point he was behind Matic, I think, and all the attackers and midfielders were ahead of him. He was trying, he was closing down, which is a positive. I'll probably give him a 5. That might be generous. But we need to look towards attackers that are running beyond the last defender, because for a large chunk of the game, our midfielders, Bruno, Pogba, and even Matic, they're all good ball progressors, and there was no one ahead of them. And that's the same applies for the wide players as well as Ronaldo. So, yeah, a 5, a generous 5. A generous 5.
Yeah, that's fair. Jamie, probably not in agreement with this so much, but we'll move on to that another time. Just make sure you go to talkofthedevils.co.uk tomorrow to see Wayne's write-up. Always a really good write-up, and obviously player ratings on there too with a bit more information than what we've given you probably. So please go and have a look at that. I just want to say thank you to everyone in the comments today. Really, really good stuff. Really good conversations. Tell your mates about it. Get liking, get subscribing, and come back next time. Be good to see you. Wayne, you've got a show on Monday at 10 a.m. Is it? Is it 10 a.m. every week with Paul Parker?
Paul Parker. I don't think Paul will disagree with Jamie's assessment of Bruno Fernandes. Let's put it that way. I think he was absolutely spot on with what he said. So yeah, I look forward to listening to Paul grumble about that. Yeah.
Always a good show, actually, on every Monday at 10 a.m. Paul Parker, if you don't know, was one of Ferguson's first right-backs. Very, very good player. So I just thought I'd put that in there. Listen, it's been a good show. Thank you, everybody. Unfortunately, it's still not a positive one for me yet. I'm desperate for one of these, and hopefully next week we may get that. Fred's laughing because he knows my current run of form at the moment, but there you go. But listen, it's been good to have everyone here. Enjoy the rest of your weekends, and we'll see you next time.